Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. Tyson, divisional round recap, man. What a great weekend of football. I mean, we had some excitement. We got to see a lot of the stars show up and show out. I thought it was a great week. How was yours?
This felt like the playoffs are finally here. Like last week was the playoffs, the wild card round, but this was the true arrival. There was some fantastic games. The storylines are buzzing, dude. It was, uh, I mean, to cap it off with, I think the first quarter last night, Chiefs guy got hit in the junk by a snowball. That's when I knew that we're in playoff football.
So we're going to go through all the games and discuss the storylines that are coming out of it, like Tyson alluded to. I mean, when you have the star players, there's going to be a lot that come out, and there's going to be a lot to discuss. So we're going to go through that, but we got to start here in Buffalo because the Bills drop another game, and it's the heartbreak. It's what everybody's talking about. And Tyson, I was thinking about this. The Buffalo Bills are like the one friend in your friend group, that just like can't get anything together or can't get anything right. But they keep telling you, no, this is going to be different. No, actually, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. No, believe me, this is what's going to work. And you want to believe him, right? Because he's a good guy. He's a nice kid. But in the back of your mind, you're like, nope, it's going to come crashing down. And that's Buffalo every single year. Because no, this year we got more physical on the offensive line. No, we're running the football now. We're more multiple. Look at us now. Once we got hot down the stretch, it's not all relying on Stephon Diggs. Josh Allen's not carrying everything. We have more things. And then we get into the biggest moment of the season. And once again, the Bills can't get over the hump. And it's different times for different reasons. Sometimes your buddy who wants to get things right, he gets caught smoking weed, right? He gets kicked out of school. Oh, man, that sucks. And, Josh Allen turns the football over. And you're like, oh, that's the reason why they lost. Other times, he shows up late for work and gets laid off. The defense, they're injured. It's just same thing, different story for the Bills, right? Just like your buddy who constantly makes mistakes and constantly is on the short end of the stick. That's Buffalo. And it's magnified, Tyson, when they're facing the Chiefs, who's like that prep school kid, and just they're all squeaky clean, they're all buttoned up, come from a great family. Andy Reid's got them, this is what you should be doing to have everything planned out. And yeah, they have talent because they have Mahomes. But even in the most torrential part of their life, right? Some things are going wrong. They always come out smelling roses because that's the way that team operates. And that's the way that kid operates in your friend group. And I was reminded of that last night watching that game.
I think like 99% of my friend group is the Bills. That's a that's a shocking realization, dude. They shrink in the biggest moments every time. Like you can point at Tyler Bass, and I won't get into this quickly because it's after every time a kicker misses a game-winning field goal, it's the immediate overreaction the other way. You can't blame the kicker. It's not the kicker's fault they lost the game. Look at Josh Allen missing this throw or whatever. You were asked to do your job twice in the whole game. You failed 50% of your job. Like that's all I'm gonna say on it. It's not all his fault, but a little bit more blame than some of these people are saying. Oh, you can't blame it. Yes, you can. That's actually what we're gonna do here. They shrink every time. It's not just the kick. It's because in the fourth quarter, after getting whatever they wanted on the ground in the first half, they go away from the concepts that were working. And then when the Chiefs counter, it's like, oh, we're just going to keep running into the back of the offensive line here. Josh Allen didn't take any home run shots. That was something we were wondering. And if he did, they were incomplete or Stephon Diggs drops one to end the game. But no explosive plays for the Buffalo Bills on offense all day. And it looked like it was going to work. It was like maybe they actually just figured this thing out because when they got the ball back and were driving down, it became abundantly clear pretty quickly that they were going to right the ship. They were going to fix this moment, and Pat Mahomes wasn't going to get the ball back. They weren't going to lose that way. They found a way to lose a new way. Like it's an old way for the Buffalo Bills. It's a new way for this version. I just run the ball. Like you're 2 shots to the end zone back to back, and now you set up a 4th and 9. Like you did this to yourselves. That's kind of the biggest thing because however many times they try to shove the square into the round hole and they just keep bashing against it. Just go get a new bag, man. Like the most vulnerable the Chiefs have ever been. The worst season of Patrick Mahomes' career to this point. Travis Kelce looks over the cliff. They don't have a true number one. The rush defense stinks. And they showed up in your place and beat you. Tough.
After trailing at halftime too, the Chiefs, we should add there. And it's going to come down, right? We're going to say the missed kick and it was close. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Cole Hardman doesn't fumble the football at the 1 yard line. You know, this is borderline blowout here for the Chiefs. But, you know, that's football. Things happen, right? Just like, again, a kicker missed a field goal. Like, that's part of the game. There's mistakes that happen. Their game plan clearly was hold on to the football. Let's be methodical. And it was working for the longest time because the storyline coming into this game was the Bills defense is banged up. How are they going to be able to survive against this Chiefs team? And we saw it drive after drive from the Chiefs. They were explosive because everybody was hurt on that Bills defense, right? So the Bills offense just had to hold on to the football, had to give their defense time to rest. And I actually thought McDermott did a good job on the defensive front to work in what he had to work with. It was actually pretty impressive. And we previewed it in our preview show. It just felt like this was a game that Travis Kelce was maybe going to have a vintage performance. Like, we hadn't seen it, but he saves his biggest moments, it feels like, for the Bills in the playoffs. 5 catches, 75, and 2 touchdowns. You know, what are you going to do there against that linebacking core? You know, AJ Klein comes off the street and is supposed to guard that guy. That's difficult. But Tyson, we got to talk about this. And I said after the game on social media, Stephon Diggs is just a guy now. Like, if you're looking at this Bills receiving unit, really, that's the unit you want to move at going forward. And he's under contract for 4 more years, but 3 catches for 21 yards on 8 targets outside of his long ball of 15 yards, 3 yards per catch. Like, really, Stephon Diggs? So if he's not going to separate and get open, you can't build your receiving core around that. Like, Khalil Shakir, I mean, thank God for that guy, because if he wasn't in the game, 7 catches, 44 yards, and that touchdown, they're toast. You take him out of the game, you have 3 other players who caught the ball. Trent Sherfield, 3 other receivers, I should say, who caught the ball. Trent Sherfield, 1 for 7. Deontay Hardy, 1 for 3. You know, it's just, and Stephon Diggs, but Dalton Kincaid, 5 for 45. And then it was the running backs. That's just not good enough. You think that's not good enough to compete at this level? And so I think there needs to be a real conversation at the front office. Like, how do we upgrade this receiver room around Josh Allen?
Well, I think part of it, like at the end of the game, is at least a little bit of a human level, because that clip's going around where Josh Allen throws the ball to the end zone and Diggs is open underneath. We're on 2 months of this dude not catching the ball, not making stuff happen after the catch. I'm saying, you know, that there's a non-zero chance that at least the person, Josh Allen, had a thought in the back of his head. Man, do I really want to throw it to this guy underneath and just like see what happened? He just dropped a 60-yard bomb down the sideline to win us a football game. So I think missed me with that. Josh Allen missed Diggs. I think he didn't throw it to Diggs on purpose. You can argue if that was the right move or not.
Well, the receiver was wide open too in the end zone,
right?
Too. Like, he's wide open.
Wasn't a good throw. I mean, he skipped the thing. He threw it like a rock over the river or whatever, and that's another issue. But I don't have any problem with the process. But Gabe Davis is a free agent after this year. You're going to roll into next year? You imagine address that position, but there's a lot of money tied up there in one guy, and that one guy might not be. You need Diggs to be at least 85% of himself for the remainder of his contract to make it worth it, and not 85% of who he was to end this year, 85% of who he was to start. And if this is not his swan song, but if this is what he's going to look like for the next part of his career, that's a huge waste. They're in salary cap, you know, double hockey sticks here. They're in big trouble. We were saying if they can't beat this version of the Chiefs, it might be a wrap on this version of the Bills as far as the window goes. Like we said, the window is always going to be open, but there are times we need to retool. They put it off and put it off and put it off, and this was their best chance yet. This was a better chance than when the offense was on a different planet than everybody else when they lose with 13 seconds left, and they couldn't get it done. Like this is the Chiefs are just going to get better. Like it's the way of the road, man. Sometimes there are, there has to be an anti-hero in every story. And unfortunately, the Buffalo Bills have been that in essentially every era of the NFL.
Yeah, and the anti-hero for our hopes, right? Like, we're rooting for Buffalo. Like, I think outside of Kansas City and Chiefs fans, was anybody rooting for the Chiefs yesterday? Like, as a human interest story. Like, this was the Swifties, you're right. Is Sean McDermott safe? Because that's what I think there was a conversation about, like, as we peaked out under Sean McDermott, and I think they did a great job of winning the division after they had a difficult time being 6-6. I don't know. Like, who do you bring in? Bill Belichick? Like, sure, but the issues are bigger than just, okay, you get rid of the coach. I think like this is a organizational problem, like from the top down. Like I don't know. And we know the
Dude,
Pagulas,
they've
the
lost
owners of
one
the
game
Bills, are
in
patient.
2 years by more than one score.
And it's tough to fire a guy for that. Here's the thing. Everybody says fire Sean McDermott. We got to think about what the owners would do. Like the Pagulas are patient, man. Like they own the Buffalo Sabres. And if you own that franchise, my God, that's going to test your patience. I don't see them making a move. You know, the players came out and supported McDermott after the game. They're just going to have to overhaul this roster. Like this is a complete, I don't want to say rebuild, but this is a strip, and we got to retool ASAP because we got Josh Allen and we need to start competing now and not the version that we've been competing at, like a true contender.
Well, he just had his Phillip Rivers moment, and like that's not who he is as a quarterback, but he's in danger of 30 years from now being remembered as the guy that was really good and kept losing in the playoffs to whether it was Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or Pat Mahomes. Like all that remains to be seen. Maybe he'll win later in his career, but should they fire Sean McDermott? Probably not. But it does feel like you just hit your head on the ceiling, like you've done that year over year. What else do you need to see? I push back a little bit to the people that are like, oh, he's blitzed too much. It's like the alternative is to let Mahomes sit in the pocket for 5 seconds. And I don't want to hear the numbers that actually it's better if he's sitting back in the. No, it's not, because it's the playoffs. You can take whatever you want from the Commanders game in week 3 of 2020. Like, who cares? This is him at his best and his receivers at their best. It's a no-win situation. He's in. It's a purgatory for the Bills because it's going to be this forever. Like you have to make the fix. The problem is they made the fix. They just went away from it in the fourth quarter.
And people maybe say, why don't you talk about the Chiefs? Listen, this is who the Chiefs are. They overcome big moments. Like, what is there to say?
Yes.
Like, okay, they went on the road and won the first road game in the Mahomes era. Like, that's great. Like, that's impressive. But like, was anybody like, oh, we learned a lot about the Chiefs now? Not really. The story is the Buffalo Bills. Like they just continue to not be able to get the monkey off their back. Is that ever going to come? That's what we got to wait to see. And they're going to have a long off season to think about that and try to formulate how to get that done. So we'll have plenty more to dive into at the Buffalo Bills. We got more on the Kansas City Chiefs as they get ready to take on the Baltimore Ravens, who we'll discuss, and their dominant win later in the show. But Tyson, we got to talk about, I mean, my God, the Niners. I was texting you. I'm like, the Niners might be bad. And again, that's an overreaction, of course.
You're quick to those.
But I was being hyperbolic, but the way they looked, unprepared, Purdy looked just for a long portion of this game. Deebo Samuel goes out early. I was shocked they didn't get Brandon Ayuk the football more, like really shocked that they didn't target him. This offense looked out of sync. What did you take away from this game?
That the Packers are going to be really good for a long time. Like that was mostly it. Jordan Love went too far to the far end of the spectrum to end the game. But like honestly, I'm not. People are killing him for the throw. I don't care. Like he played well. He put him in a position to win, and he made a mistake in his first year as a starter with a bunch of guys who were 22. On the Niners side of things, I don't know how much. Like I'm kind of sick of the rust versus rest thing when it comes to the first seeds because they win their first game every time when we're in the playoffs. It's just by how do you look doing it. It's not the end of the world that they only win by 3, right? Like next week they could show up and beat Detroit by 45 points. We're all back in. Like it's not that far out of the realm of possibility. You can think back to many Super Bowl teams from a conference that looked bad in their first game and ended up dominating second. The issue is the overthrows. Like that wasn't necessarily I didn't feel like, at least watching the game, that was something like Green Bay was focused on disrupting timing, but it didn't feel like when you're watching it was to the point where the ball was 3 yards over somebody's head. I think on Saturday night was the first time that I've really thought, wow, they're lucky they made that Christian McCaffrey trade. Because for every other game it was like, yeah, I mean, he's awesome. We knew he was awesome. I wonder, like, Eli Mitchell could be getting 100 in this offense too. He activated full God mode in that game to win them the game when it mattered, and that's why you go get a guy like that. And that's what makes them so scary. Is that was the time to get him probably. If you're an NFC team in the playoffs, they're going to look like that. The weather's bad. Kittle's dropping balls. The defense looks shaky for a lot of the game, and then 23 gets the rock. And it's just however many he wants, when he wants them, and they're going to go win a football game.
17 carries, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns, caught 7 balls for 30 yards, was targeted 12 times. Like this usage rate was just off the charts, and they needed it, right? Like again, Brock Purdy struggled. You can look at the end of the stats, and people are going to point that, right? It's everything with Purdy. It's stats: 23 completions, 252 yards, a touchdown. His QBR 61.9. His pass rate 86.
He threw like 7 balls that should have been picked.
Watch the games and tell me this guy was doing anything jumping off the charts to you, right? Like in this offense, for you to look like that against the Packers defense, again, I know they played well against the Cowboys to start, but this is a Packers defense who got pantsed by Baker Mayfield, like embarrassed by that offense. It's concerning, I think, for this game. Now, again, like you said, next week could be different. Like they could just go in and blitz them, right? Like it's a week-to-week league. We know that, but I think this is why people have been hesitant to just crown Brock Purdy, like, oh, he's top 5 guy. Like, look what he's doing this year. Like, this is why people sit back and like, I don't know. We still have some question marks about Brock Purdy. The people who love him are going to shout you down with stats and all this. Well, look what he's doing and this. The people who are still hesitant point to these aspects of the game. Tyson, I want to be honest. It looked like sometimes the moment was too big for him. Like it looked like he had deer in the headlights.
Most of the game. Most of the game.
That's the concern you may have if you're the 49ers. If we get that performance from our quarterback, no, he didn't make a mistake, right? Like 0 interceptions. But again, like you said, how many balls were interceptable that just were dropped? There was a pick 6 in the first quarter that could have completely changed the game that the kid just dropped. I don't know.
Another missed kick here?
Yeah, another missed kick that puts you up 7 points instead of 3. All these sorts of things that come back. But I think the Packers definitely let this one slip away, and I can't believe we're saying that about Jordan Love in his rookie year and where the Packers were early in the season.
And I honestly liked LaFleur going quick on that 4th down. It was unfortunate that they didn't get it, but yeah, the game's different at the end of the day if it's 6-0 there instead of 3-0 for the final score. But that's a hypothesis that the game would have gone the same way from that point. We don't know that. And I thought, like, this is an aside. Both sides, I think, like the refs in the spots they were giving in this game were just atrocious. Like they were not even close. Both sides for like multiple times in the game. It was tragic. But for San Francisco, like Steve Wilkes kind of looked, the defense looked a little bit more vulnerable than I was expecting them to look in that weather with this young team coming into their building. And it wasn't like they got rain all. I mean, Aaron Jones did work.
108.
Aaron Jones was like, "Hey, I'm here." That dude hates AJ Dillon. Like he wants to get him off the face of the earth every time he doesn't play. He goes off. But it was watching. Like I said last week, it was the current iteration versus potentially the new one, and what they're trying to build. I didn't learn anything about the San Francisco 49ers. Like a good team wins these kind of games at home when they matter, and they're a good team. Like, are they better than the Lions? Yes. Are they going to beat the Lions? I don't know. Like that's the story of the NFL. If you're sitting here and the Niners suck now because they barely beat the Packers, it's like, yeah, Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls. Like let's just start. Sometimes guys get hot.
Mm-hmm. And I should point out, so Aaron Jones finished with 108 on the ground. His long was for 53, so 17 for 55. That makes things look a little bit different. So I want to be fair to point that out. But again, at the end of the day, all yards matter. Like I hate when people say, "Oh yeah," but well, if you don't have that 53-yard run, then the game looks different. So whatever. That's an aside as well. I agree with you. The Packers they've announced themselves as dirty players in the NFC.
That's scary, dude.
Like Jordan, this kid's pretty special, man. Like I'm on the right side of history with this one. I never wavered, Jordan. I never wavered.
Dude, it's popping out of his hand when he throws the ball. It's like
it's awesome.
Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes kind of arm talent that you don't see. And like again, we're talking about the game, but we're kind of focusing on the guys who lose because we're going to do a show later this week where we talk about the teams that won and what those games as we kind of dive into those more. But you got to be so freaking excited if you're a Green Bay Packers fan. I was watching that game with some Bears fans, and that was pretty electric because they rose-colored glasses probably aren't the right term. Maybe poop brown was what they were watching that game with. Joe Barry's got them roll. Like it was fantastic, and obviously everything can change next year. Like maybe Jordan Love regresses and they look bad and we look stupid, but as we sit right here, the NFC and the NFL as a whole are going to have a problem for about a decade.
Well, a team that we're definitely going to talk about here, Tyson, the winners are the Ravens, because holy smokes, was that impressive in the second half. All we heard, not from our show, but from other shows, well, Harbaugh in these spots and Lamar when these favorites in big spots, you can't really trust them. Guys, different offensive coordinator. This is a different football team. Like, how many times do we have to say things look different on a year-to-year basis, unless you're the Bills, but that things change in the NFL. And when we saw Lamar Jackson figure things out with Todd Monken, I thought it took a little bit at the beginning of the season. Tyson and I talked about it. Kind of looked similar to what we'd seen in years past. But this year, in that game, it was ridiculous how good Lamar Jackson was.
He was the MVP. He's the best player in the world right now. Like, it's not Mark Andrews, right? And that's, he doesn't have wide receiver. Well, just make it. Rashad Bateman's out here getting open, catching balls. The way Lamar is kind of not, I don't know, like, it's not picking apart. Like, I'm struggling to put it in it like he is, but he's not picking them apart the way Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen does. Like, I think Ben Solak said earlier this year, it's like watching Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes are climbing their way up this mountain, and Lamar's just kind of on the other side, just like going up doing his own thing, And that's how he is. He's a different kind of football player that presents unique problems. And we said in the preview show that Houston, fantastic season. They could lose by 100, nobody would care, but the Ravens weren't going to stop running the football, and they didn't stop running the football, and they just. Eventually the dam broke open, and it was like, okay, we can breathe now. And then my favorite part of this NFL season is when Lamar and the Ravens get to style on you a little bit. When they're up by enough to start kind of swagging, and Zay Flowers kind of leading that charge and stuff. But I don't know if there's been a more fun team to watch on both sides of the football in the last 5 years in the NFL. I'd be hard pressed to pick another one.
This defense is just ridiculous. Like, they are suffocating. Gross. Their team speed is absurd. The way they can run, their linebackers can cover wide receivers. It's unbelievable just the amount of talent that they have, and they've overcome injuries. Marlon Humphrey was out. Like, it's crazy. And
didn't even really
Mike McDonald. That's the thing, right? That you didn't know the scheme, dude. Collinsworth kept talking corner blitz. It's just eating up Stroud. They couldn't adjust. Now, again, rookie quarterback, you expect a few years in the league, maybe you can adjust to that. But the way it was designed, the way it was covered, I guess, what am I trying to say? Where they couldn't tell what it was. That was just so impressive on the defensive side for the Ravens. And like you said, again, just to add to your point, yeah, we said it. The Ravens aren't going to stop running the football. Like, that's their identity. They ran the ball 42 times for 229 yards on the ground. Lamar carried the ball 11 for 100 and 2 touchdowns. Like, and when you say he's picking them apart, it was like he was picking them apart, not like his arm, like we see, Brady and Manning to do. Like, okay, no, this is the time where I'm going to gash them up the middle because I know their backs are turned. Boom, I pop one for 15. Okay, now they think I may be running. I'm going to look for crossers in the middle field. Here's Zay Flowers. Oh, I need to go to his corners. Rashad Bateman. Oh, he got open. Boom, I'll hit him on the numbers. Like, this was an impressive game and the best we've seen Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. And if he's going to continue to play like that with this defense, it's hard for me to think that anybody can beat this team.
No, we're going into next week with 2 guys that the entire league has no idea how to defend, right? Like, we talked about the Chiefs, and we'll talk about the matchup more, but I would like to point out that Lamar Jackson's probably about to win his second unanimous MVP award in the NFL. It's never been done in history. He's doing this in the Mahomes era. Like, you were on the right side of the history with Jordan Love. I've been over here for a long time, man. I feel vindicated. But this is what, dude? Because he didn't break his ankle before in week 16. Like, this playoff run was supposed to be the same as this is a good football player on the best version of his team that he's ever had. And honestly, this isn't like Lamar slander at all. I think this Ravens team might be able to win the AFC with Brock Purdy, Jordan Love. Like, pick somebody else at quarterback that was playing this weekend. Baker Mayfield on this offense might be the only one where you're like, I don't know. But they are. You got to score 20 points to beat them, which doesn't sound like a ton, but good luck.
No, to your point, what you're making is how well constructed this roster is.
It's crazy.
They got dudes
everywhere. One of the best I've ever seen, dude.
The blue chippers everywhere. Like, Jadeveon Clowney is wrecking games for this team. Like, he wrecked the game for the Texans in the run game. Like, they couldn't run the ball. 2.7 yards per carry. When Jadeveon Clowney, sure, he didn't live up to what the expectations were coming out. That dude is a great run defender off the edge. Like, he blows up your tackle right into your guard and makes it super difficult. So I thought he had a great game if you watch it back. The Texans, like you said, there's really not much to discuss about them from this game. Both you
They're
and
awesome.
I thought the Ravens were going to win. They have a bright future. We're going to dive. This is going to be one of the most fun teams that we dive into in the offseason, talking about how they can continue to build going forward. But, you know, you lost to a better football team. That's where you want to get, is where the Ravens are at currently. You didn't have it. Lamar Jackson, what a performance from him. I think it got overshadowed a little bit because of the Chiefs and the Bills game. Because if that was on Sunday, what Lamar did, that's all we're talking about today.
I think that's like the title of his autobiography, maybe.
All right, let's finish off here. Lions keep it rolling. Just another great scene in Detroit. You know, Aiden Hutchinson, the local kid, you know, almost like in tears on the sidelines. He's watching everybody cheer. What a story, man. Dan Campbell. We've been patting ourselves on the back a lot this show, and believe me, we get a lot of things wrong, but you know,
most of them.
We were right on Dan Campbell from the jump. Like, when all the media said this guy wouldn't work because he's talking about biting kneecaps and stuff. You know what works in this league is leadership. Being able to lead a group of guys, a group of men to go into battle. And Dan Campbell, Frank Ragnow after the game in the interview said he's never been around a better leader than Dan Campbell. Speaks a lot about what he's built, this culture that he's built, and what this team is feeling right now, Tyson. Like, yeah, I got a little spotty at the end. Were you ever worried that they were going to lose that game?
It's gotten to a point, and I was saying this with the people I was watching the game with. If there is a 3rd down and 8, and the Lions have to convert to win the football game, the Lions are going to get the 1st down. Like, that's where we're at with this football team. Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to be open, and then Jared Goff's going to give them the football. They're going to win the game. It's a crazy thing to think about the Detroit Lions. Bro, they took a hunk out of them. Like, they're biting kneecaps. We're going to take a hunk out of them. We're going to take another hunk, and you know, a man can't take more than 2 hunks. I think that was his total message there. But Rachaad White was awesome. The Buccaneers had things rolling. Mike Evans down the sideline ties the game at half. You know, you're starting to feel nervous if you're the Buffalo Bills. The Detroit Lions showed back up in that second half. We're like, yo, we're at home. You're not taking this from us. We've earned this. That's a crazy thing. Dan Campbell was hired in the same hiring cycle as Brandon Staley. Do yourself a favor and go back and look at what people were saying about those 2 hires.
I love that. Tyson, I also want to point out Brad Holmes, all the shit that he got.
Genius.
Sam Laporta, rookie.
Necessary.
Dude, like, Sam Laporta, 9 catches for 65 yards. That's your rookie tight end. Everybody's like, oh, man, maybe he was taking too high. Oh, you can't take a running back that high. Oh, jeez. Jahmyr Gibbs, 9 carries, 74 yards, 8.2 on the ground. Also caught 4 balls for 40. Kid had a 114-yard game and a touchdown. This is to go to the NFC Championship game. Not too big. Brian Branch, tied for the lead in tackles on the team. Had a sack, 2 tackles for loss. The evaluation of talent that Brad Holmes has done since coming over from the Rams. Not being afraid to take guys because maybe it looks bad from PFF or all these graders, or as soon as the day comes out, no, this bad pick. Really? Would you rather have that draft with those guys, or rather have something that was an A+ from other guys? Because there's a lot of drafts that got good grades from these so-called evaluators that I think would love to trade in what the Lions just did. So you can talk about, yeah, this is a bad pick value-wise. If the guy can play, the guy can play, and that's what you're looking for in the NFL. And the Lions hit that out of the park. Jared Goff, I know people are just waiting for the hat to drop, and they can point to, oh, see, Goff stinks. And maybe that comes this week. But the job that he's done for this Lions team, it's just been remarkable. I'm super happy for him.
I mean, Jared Goff and Pat Mahomes played a pretty awesome game once upon a time. Like, if we get a replay of that, you know, I'm in favor. The entire world has to be rooting for the Lions, unless you are like from Baltimore, from Kansas City, from San Francisco. This is just it's the best story, and it might end up being the best story of 2024 if they can pull this whole thing off. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. Tampa Bay getting to the divisional round, A+.
Oh, yeah.
Like, fantastic season. I don't know what this means for them next year. I don't know how much money Baker Mayfield is getting paid. I don't know if Mike Evans is going to be back. I don't know anything about this team going forward. But they were competitive, and they had a shot all the way to the end. What did you think? What do you think about when coaches, like when Bowles went for 2 early?
In the second score? No, it's stupid. Yeah. All these analytics, you got to know what you do. Why?
Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't
Why
make any
prolong
logical
the game?
Sense. If you want to go for 2 to win the game, go for 2 to win the game. If you want to stay in the game, kick the extra point, because as soon as they missed that 2-point conversion, everybody in Detroit went like this.
Yeah. Tyson, what do you think that did to the Bucs sideline? Like, that's what these analytics don't take into account. Like, that's what numbers on the paper say. Well, statistically, it's 67% chance to give you, like, yeah, but when you don't get that and you're the Bucs and you're like, man, now we need to go down and then get a 2-point conversion. We just didn't get it. That's what I think these analytics, and we're not anti-analytics at all. I think there needs to be context for them. It's not all be all with this stuff. Like, you can use it, but you got to think the other side. Because if Bowles doesn't do that, if he kicks the extra point, everybody's like, what idiot? Like, why? They still have a chance. They go down, score a touchdown. You can win the game by 2, or you go to overtime. You would have gone to overtime. You would have gone to overtime if then you had to get the 2-point conversion. You don't give yourself a chance that way. It's crazy.
Make the decision early for no reason other than you can win the game late. You can still win the game late, or you can go to overtime. Those are the same options that you had before. You just now have to do them in reverse order, which breaks the brain of these computers and the dudes putting them together, because, they ran a model and the model says this. And it's like, dude, that guy, Mike Evans, just sold out. Not only that, but you got to play an extra play. Like, you got to play an extra play. Whatever. It's not the reason they lost the game. I just thought that was the analytics stuff is going too far. Like, when I see 4th and 7 with a green check mark next to it, I'm like, that's wrong. Like, it's wrong. It doesn't. I don't care what your computer said.
Yeah. The thing is, too, it doesn't take into account how many possessions are in a football game either.
Exactly.
Like, when it's the first possession of the game, and it's like, well, the analytics say to go for it. Well, maybe in like the third quarter when you have like maybe 2 possessions left, but when you have a whole game ahead of yourself, like, I don't know. I think Dan Campbell does a great job with that stuff. Like, he has a feel, and the team's bought into it. That's the other thing. Like, you have to be mentally bought into, okay, we just know like we're going to go for it pretty aggressively. Because if you're kind of one of these coaches, like, do you think Todd Bowles really wanted to go for 2 there? No. Todd Bowles, out of all people. But I think somebody got into his ears like, well, actually, this is what you should be doing. And he was like, oh, man, well, maybe I should listen to that. For damn well, if it was up to Todd Bowles, he'd kick an extra point there. Like,
Todd Bowles would have kicked a field goal from the 40. He would have been like, all right, we're down here far enough.
Yeah. So I think that's a good aside. I was actually going to ask you that too. So it's funny that you brought that up. But I'm curious with the Bucs. I think they got a lot of questions to answer this offseason. This was a great season for them, I think, in context. Like, people were picking them to finish last. They win the division. They were, 1 possession away. Baker had the ball through the interception from getting to an NFC championship game. So I don't bet Todd Bowles gets a bad rap and he's a dinosaur and all that stuff. I thought he did a hell of a job this year.
I did too. I mean, call the timeout, but
yeah.
Besides that, it was good. Like, it was a disaster clock kind of to end the game. But dude, they got outplayed by a better football team on the road. Like, you can't. This was the worst division in football, and they only won it because everybody else gave it to them. Like, and to finish your season a possession short of going to the NCAA title game is pretty awesome.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our divisional round recap. Tyson, any closing statements that you want to make? Sometimes we do this, sometimes we don't. But any closing thoughts you had on this awesome weekend of football?
I don't think so. I mean, I just can't believe there's 3 games left. There's 2 weeks left, so that it flies by. But again, it's a different season. Like, it doesn't matter what happened before. It's almost like it doesn't exist in my brain.
I know. It's crazy, man. 3 more games. What a depressing.
Is Bill Belichick or Jim Harbaugh, any of these guys, going to sign a freaking contract so we can do an emergency pod? Or
I don't know.
Are we just going to is Nick Sirianni still in a meeting with Jeff Lurie?
I think he is, actually. It's an ongoing meeting. So, to that point, like Tyson says. Yeah, seriously. Like Tyson said, we got a lot covered for you. So make sure to subscribe to us, subscribe, and share the show. Like, we'll do an emergency pod if there's some big dominoes that start coming down on the coaching front. Like, that's basically what we're waiting for. Figuring out college stuff that we want to do. We have ideas on that, but the transfer portal makes things very, very interesting. But we'll have more content coming out for you. And as we turn the calendar to basketball, we'll stay up to date with all that stuff and keep you all up to date too if you've been paying more attention to the football field instead of the hardwood. So follow us on socials in the meantime as well, X, Instagram, and TikTok. It's the same handle at ISWIS_pod. We'll be back later in the week to preview the championship weekend, as well as doing another gambling episode. Hopefully make you some money. We've been having a good run so far in the playoffs. So we'll speak to y'all later in the week. Till then, guys, peace.